Hey, welcome guys. So today we have our H3 model, the Battle of the Bulge figure that we did a review on a couple weeks ago, but I have him painted up, and we made our best little go at a small Battle of the Bulge diorama for him, or vignette, whatever you want to call it. So just a nice way to display our figure instead of it just, standing up. And as you probably heard me say before, for some of us that don't have a ton of space for dioramas, I've actually come to like building these small little kind of singular figure displays for them. So we'll go through a quick process on the painting, and then also how we made the diorama or vignette, but mostly the snow effect. It's an Ammo by Mig set that I got, I don't know, a year or two ago. I've only used it once. This is the second time. There's multiple different ways to use it. So anyways, let's flip it over to the bench and let's see how we built this thing up. All right, so we did talk about this in the review, but we don't have much to build here. There's basically the figure, one arm, his canteen, his helmet, and then the top of his M1 Grand, which is easily the most frustrating part of this, but we'll get to that in a second. Anyways, if you've ever built 3D printed figures or used parts before, we have a lot of supports to cut off, and I was a little bit scared, I will say, nervous, however you want to put it. After using the T-Rex 3D printed parts, I didn't know how fragile H3 models would be, how brittle. I will say they are nowhere near as brittle. I didn't have parts flying off, although they were still brittle. So a lot of care has to be taken in order to get those off. And then unfortunately, even being super, super careful taking them off, I did get a couple small little holes on the actual figure himself that I had to use some filler on. We then are going to attach all of the parts of this figure using super glue. I'm sure there's other glues that you could use, but I don't work with resin a ton, and this is just always what I use. You just have to be careful because you don't have much time you don't have any time actually to make any adjustments, which is what makes the top of the M1 Grand so difficult, because you have to put it on perfectly. And I feel like every time I look at this figure, it's a little bit crooked, and it was kind of driving me nuts. Anyways, once we have our figure built up, we're then going to airbrush him in Tamiya's flat earth there, the XF52. The reason I chose to go with the airbrush route was twofold. One, to preserve as much detail as possible, really put as little paint on that figure as possible. And then two, he's wearing that big overcoat, so it was really an opportunity where, his torso and bottom aren't two different colors, so 90% of the figure is going to be that kind of brownish, kind of pea coat color. So it was actually really nice to be able to do that and save just a lot of time on painting and stuff. So I do like the glazing method that we're going to go with here when it comes to painting, but nothing really uses as little paint or puts as little paint on a piece of plastic as the airbrush. So we get a lot of good detail still showing through. What I mean by glazes, if you watched, I talked about it in the figure building video that I did. Essentially, you're using like 80 or 90% water, somewhere between like 70 and 90. I kind of just eye it out. And you're going to do, this is obviously coat after coat here. That's about 5 coats right there. And we're going to probably do about 7 or 8 in order to fully get the flesh to, not show any of that brown color underneath. And what that's going to do is it's really going to preserve all of the detail possible. We're going to do the same on the pant legs here. We're going to paint those up in olive drab color. I will say I used Vallejo's olive drab here, and it's very, very green, and I have the same issue with their olive drab as I do with their field gray. No matter how well I mix the paint, they want to separate. So that obviously, because of the folds in the pants, gives you a much better view of what the glazing will do and how much detail, will kind of show through, because the paint is so thin. You don't want it to pool up in the recesses, but it's going to do it naturally. And so you're going to be left with that really nice, almost dry brushed looking effect to it. Then we're going to do the boots. I didn't really have like a good like leather boot color, so I used that red leather and I mixed it with a little of that matte earth, or that kind of brownish color, just to give them more of. I didn't want them to look super super red, like he just bought them at the store, because he didn't. But really happy with the way that came out, and I didn't mix it all the way, so it was able to kind of give some different tones, which was really nice. I then started painting up his his belt and everything that goes on it with a khaki color, and I eventually changed that to it was like a US drab color, which is a little bit darker. Vallejo's khaki is really really light. It's a nice color. It's just really really light, lighter than what's on there now. So once we have everything painted up, I didn't know what color to paint his knife. I did olive drab on the sleeve and a black handle. I'm trying to think of the last time I saw, a World War II knife. Was probably in an Army Navy store, and that's what I think it came in. So a little bit of guesswork was done there, but not too bad in terms of stuff to paint. There were some really difficult details, like the strap on his helmet and things like that, but nothing too crazy. We're then going to clear coat and seal in our paint with Tamiya's TS13, which is what I always do. There's no decals or anything to put on this figure, so I'm sure we could have gone with like a matte coat or something. It's just habit at this point. But that's going to give us a surface to do exactly what we're doing now, which is apply. We're going to go with a dark brown wash. You could use, another dark color. I wanted dark brown, just like it's a dirty color. I mean, he's in war, right? He's digging a foxhole, so even if it is winter, he's definitely his jacket's gonna accumulate that dirt and that filth. We're gonna leave that on for, I left it on for like a couple hours, and then we're just gonna remove it with a Q-tip or cotton swab, depending on what you call it, while it's still a little bit wet, but it's started to set up that enamel thinner. And that's just going to give us a really nice patina on the rifle itself. It gives that kind of wood grain texture. And we're really just going to make sure that we keep it off of the flesh, like the face and the hands and everything like that. But that's the final look that we get with the wash. Then we're going to come in with a dry brush and kind of do some highlights again. It's just to get those 3 different tones of paint, or 3 different tones of color to each of the different parts of this figure. So first we're going to start with his pant legs. And so just use olive drab and then, a couple drops of white paint. Blot it off on a paper towel, and then just a quick dry brush. I like to do it over the wash almost immediately. I don't let the wash, I let the wash set up for like a couple more hours after the Q-tip, but it's still a little bit wet at that point. And what that does is it just kind of blends it all together. You won't move the wash around all that much. You won't take any of it off, but you'll end up highlighting, the high points of the figure, as well as just blending those 3 different colors that you're going to have all together. And I found it ends up looking pretty nice. And there were a lot of really nice areas at least on the top of his jacket, like that arm and his pant legs. They're just prime for dry brushing. So then came the face, and I still haven't found exactly what I want to do with the face of a figure. If you follow the channel, I'm not, a huge figure painter, but I really do enjoy it while I'm waiting for, my tanks and airplanes to dry and things like that. And just when I have, a little bit less time. So I ended up putting these 3 different oil brush colors very lightly on his face. Now, it's really hard to capture on camera. For whatever reason, when I shoot the video, it doesn't like to capture the flesh tones. The pictures that I have at the end of this video will show a little bit better, but even with, the naked eye, it just didn't do enough. So I came back with Tamiya's Basic Flesh, their like panel liner for, flesh tones, and which is what I've always used for faces. And I just put that in the kind of recessed areas just to get like another color in there and some darker flesh tones and stuff. So I painted 2 little blacks of his eyes. I didn't do the white because I feel like I've never seen a figure that didn't look cartoony that had the whites of their eyes painted. Still not sure how I feel about it, but I wanted to try something different. So now on to the fun part, which is this is Ammo by Mig's Winterizing, the real snow set, as you can see there. It comes with all 4 of these different products, and it's going to let us make powdered snow. We're going to be able to make, it's still powdered snow, but as you see here, it goes within the grass. And then we're going to be able to make wet snow. So when I did this on my, I used it on the Jumbo 75 Tamiya that they released, I don't know, a summer or 2 ago. They re-released it. It was an old 80s or 70s kit. And so you can put some wet snow in the tracks and some freshly fallen snow on top. It's really, really easy. And it just dries quickly. It's an easy application. It ends up looking really nice. So if you're interested in, doing some snow, something like that, I would definitely recommend this set. I have no experience with any other set outside of this to compare it to, but it wasn't all that expensive. And I mean, you can see at the end and obviously let me know what you think, but it ends up looking really, really good, and it's got a really nice texture to it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to follow the directions. It's about 70% of the powdered snow, 30% of their snow binder, and then a couple drops, it says, of like the lucky varnish. Mix that all up, and then I ended up watering it down for this application. You just literally put some water in it, just because I wanted to create kind of a frost on his jacket, as you would get in the winter just when it's cold. I didn't want to obviously layer him in snow, but I wanted his jacket to look, frosty and crispy and everything. And obviously then, a little bit heavier on like the shoulders and helmet and things. And of course the boots. So then on to our base. Now, I got a couple of these blocks of wood. They're like $3 or $4 at Michael's. I'm sure any hobby store has these types of things. They come pre-sanded. All I do is paint them black with a can of Rust-Oleum. And they're kind of the perfect size to do this type thing. They're a little cube, which it looks a little bit funny, I think, but it makes it really easy to pick up. Like if you want to move it or whatever. So it's really nice, and I don't know. I have some other things that I'm going to play with in terms of making bases, but this is kind of my favorite at the moment, at least for like a singular figure. Then I'm going to use my typical hefty amount of scenic glue, as I don't know, maybe I don't trust that it's going to work. But I have the Ammo by Mig. This is one of the scenic mats that you've seen. I would have made it for, a circular kind of disc to display a tank. And so I'm just using the edges from that over and over again. And what I wanted to do here I used some European mixture like leaves from Ammo by Mig. I broke a couple twigs outside to kind of, look like logs. I found some with some, lichen and stuff on them, which look great. All I want to do here, I didn't want to include a tree because it would be too vertical, I thought, for a small area. I did try out kind of something to see. So I just wanted it to look like the forest. There's leaves in the ground. I wanted snow poking through the grass. I didn't want it to look like 4 feet of snow. So I thought this base was perfect. It's kind of patchy grass like you might find in the wintertime. And then I also broke up some little pieces of wood from a twig. I don't know. There were airburst shells going on, and trees were blowing up in Bastogne. So anything that kind of made it look like that, I threw in here. We have some nice small rocks that were already in the base, so I didn't have to add anything there. Then came the powdered snow application, and this is interesting because the directions on in the kit, the set here for the snow, basically tells you if you're going to put it into grass to use their airbrush thinner. It gives you the product code, and it's Ammo by Mig's airbrush thinner, which doesn't come in the set, and I don't have because I have tamiyas, and that's what I don't really airbrush acrylic, like water-based acrylic. So I just went with the odorless thinner from Ammo by Mig, and I will say it definitely works in the grass. It made that powdered snow pretty much rock solid. Funny enough, though, it did not work at all on the twigs or on the little khaki bags that we have there that I'm putting drops onto. So I just went in at the end, just like I did with the figure, and put the snow back on the bags and the twigs like that. So not sure why it works in the grass, but not on anything else. But you can always go back to the directions that are in the set, and that'll work perfectly. So there you have it. We glued our figure to our base using our super glue again. I will include some images here in maybe like 30-40 seconds, just because the camera picks up color a little bit differently. So tell me what you think of the face, of the eyes. I don't know. I'm still not sure how I feel about it. I love to hear what other people do. For painting faces and stuff like that, it's easily the hardest part of doing a figure. The good news is that if we put them on a little base and put some snow, I think it does pull some attention away from the face. But I'm really happy with the way that this came out. This was a fun little kind of side project. I spent a lot of time on it yesterday, which will be Thursday by the time that this comes out. But there you have it. If you haven't already and you made it this far, I'd please ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. We will be doing many more of these kind of builds, little dioramas, vignettes, whatever you want to call them, as well as obviously full scale model builds. I do have another H3 models figure. It's a Battle of Carrington. It's like a paratrooper with a M1 carbine. Just not sure exactly yet how I want to display him, how I can make something look like Carrington. Obviously, Battle of the Bulge was easy because we know that there's going to be snow and things like that. So I still have the Comet, which I'm pretty much done painting. Just need to do some clear coats and decals on that. And then the Tiger got put on the back burner a little bit just because I really wanted to finish this as well. But stay tuned next week. We're gonna start a kind of beginner tank model build. I won't give away what it is yet, but it's an old kit. It's a great kit, and I'm really looking forward to doing something a little bit simpler with the Tacome Tiger and even the Comet with the 3D printed parts and this figure. I need kind of an old school kit, a rubber band track kit, if you will. Not to put too many spoilers out there, but we'll keep it really, really simple. And yeah, so I'll leave you with the figure here for a couple more seconds. Here it is with some light on it to kind of show some of the different colors. But again, please feel free to leave comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know, what you do for. Doesn't have to just be faces, but maybe some diorama, vignette ideas, anything like that. But I appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you on the next video.